I'm approaching the east front of Wentworth Woodhouse, and it is here where a tale of two Wentworths begins. When, in 1695, William Wentworth, 2nd Earl of Strafford and owner of this magnificent house, dies childless. He leaves vast estates in England and Ireland, and these estates are expected to pass to this guy, Thomas Wentworth, the first cousin of William Wentworth. He hopes to get his hands on the Wentworth fortune, especially the great house, Wentworth Woodhouse. Imagine his disappointment then, when he is pipped to the inheritance by Thomas Watson, William Wentworth's nephew, the son of his sister Anne. Upon William Wentworth's memorial in York Minster, where he was buried, he names Thomas Watson his heir, on the proviso that Watson takes the Wentworth name, which he promptly does, and is thenceforth known as Thomas Watson Wentworth. By the way, there are a lot of Thomases in this story, and just to make it even more complicated, there's a lot of Williams as well. But of the Thomases we've spoke about, it's fair to say that one is happier than the other. Thomas Wentworth is furious, and it is from that fury that stems the family rivalry that will simmer for the best part of a century. In 1708, 13 years after missing out on Wentworth Woodhouse, Thomas Wentworth buys the house behind me. It is known then as Stainborough Hall, and he embarks upon a radical building programme that transforms this relatively modest house into the grand palace that we can see today. And one of the great motivations for this building work is to build a finer, fancier house than Wentworth Woodhouse, and thus outdo his rival over the hill, Thomas Watson Wentworth. From this point in the gardens, you can see the wonderful Baroque wing of Wentworth Castle. It was the first of Thomas Wentworth's alterations that were completed at the house. It was completed in 1713, and while it is magnificent in itself, it's also a taste of things to come in terms of future modifications. But today I'm not here to explore the house or the houses. I am here to explore the one thing that Thomas Watson didn't inherit from his uncle Bill, and that is the title of the Earl of Strafford. William Wentworth was the 2nd Earl of Strafford, but because Thomas Watson wasn't a direct descendant, he didn't inherit the title and it became extinct. However, the title does crop up in this tale, and it is very important to the Wentworth story. But what is an earl and what is an earldom? Well, the earl is one of the 5 ranks of nobility in Britain's peerage. In order of importance, each more senior than the next, they run Baron, Viscount, Earl, Marquis and Duke. Earl, of course, being a little bit mid-table, kind of like being the Crystal Palace of the nobility, if you like. I mean, it's better than being a peasant, but you're still a few wins away from the Champions League spots. But, of course, joking aside, being an earl in the 17th century, you had some clout. You had elevated social status. you had considerable wealth from your lands and estates. You were conferred legal protections that were not conferred to the common folk. And of course, you were given a seat in the House of Lords, which meant you could influence laws and legislation. But where does the name Strafford come from? Most titles are linked to a place, a geographic location. The Earl of Suffolk, the Earl of Richmond, the Earl of Derby, that kind of thing. But if you put the word Strafford into Google Maps, you will not find a single region, city, town, or village in England that bears that name. However, and particularly if you come from Barnsley, Rotherham or Wakefield, you will find lots of streets and buildings that bear the name Strafford.
There's the Earl of Strafford, a pub in the village of Hooton Roberts on the outskirts of Rotherham. There's Strafford Avenue in Westborough, Barnsley. There's the Strafford Industrial Park in Dodworth.
And two pubs known as the Strafford Arms, one in Wakefield and this one in the village of Stainborough, which is just around the corner from the old entrance to Wentworth Castle. And these places were named for the Earls of Strafford, who sat first at Wentworth Woodhouse and then here at Wentworth Castle. But there is still no Strafford the place. So to find the origin of the word, we have to go a little further afield. I'm in Castle Hill Park in Mexborough. The park takes its name because it was once home to a motte and bailey castle. The motte meaning mound, which is clearly still visible today, and the bailey being a keep or a tower that would sit atop the mound. Back in the day, when the castle still stood, before the trees and the houses, it would have overlooked one important geographical feature of the local landscape: the Strafford Sands. I've come a little further out of town to Mexborough Low Lock on the Sheffield and South Yorkshire navigation. At the far side of the canal bank, beyond the hedgerow behind me, are the Strafford Sands. Historically, they were important because they provided a ford across the River Don, a place where the water level was low enough for people, goods and animals to cross without the need for a bridge. Fording points were few and of great importance for policing, administration, taxation and national defence. This was one of the reasons why the castle was built where it was, because it would have overlooked the Strafford Sands and the ford, and consequently control who and what crossed it. The sands are clearly marked on an 1854 Ordnance Survey map. You can also see Mexborough Low Lock marked as well, and this very distinctive W shape of the course of the River Don. The landscape hasn't changed all that much in the intervening years, and you can still make out that W-shaped flow of the river. The Strafford Sands were said to be the meeting place of the Strafford and Tickhill wapentake. A wapentake was an administrative division in Anglo-Saxon England. It was essentially local government. It oversaw the courts, law and order, and taxation. The word wapentake means weapon touch, and local chiefs would gather at places like the Strafford Sands to meet and discuss business, and their agreement on that business would be demonstrated by a touch of their swords, hence weapon touch, wapentake. For these two reasons, the Strafford Sands were important as a strategic crossing point of the River Don and as the meeting place of the wapentake. But they're important in the Wentworth tale as well, as it is from the Strafford Sands where the Earldom of Strafford takes its name. And here we have the connection between the Earldom and its geography. Strafford, Strafford. The Strafford and Tickhill wapentake covered a large part of South Yorkshire, parts of Barnsley, parts of Doncaster and Sheffield, and considerable parts of Rotherham. Darfield was in there, Brodsworth and Conisborough, Bamborough, Mexborough, Wath, Thunsker, and, of course, the village of Wentworth, where I am today. So, in 1640, King Charles I bestowed upon his close advisor, Thomas Wentworth of Wentworth Woodhouse, two titles, that of Baron Raby and that of the Earl of Strafford, a reference to the Anglo-Saxon wapentake in which his estate was situated. This Thomas Wentworth, and I did say there was a lot of Thomases in this story, this Thomas Wentworth is the father of William Wentworth. He is the grandfather of Thomas Watson Wentworth, and he is the great uncle of Thomas Wentworth. There is a memorial to him and the other members of the Wentworth family in the church behind me, Holy Trinity Church in Wentworth, or the Old Church as it's known. However, it won't come as any surprise to learn that there are no memorials to the Stainborough branch of the Wentworth family in this church. And it is here where I will leave our story for the time being. In the next episode of A Tale of Two Wentworths, I will explore the fate of the first Earl of Strafford in the lead up to the English Civil War. And I'll give you a bit of a spoiler. It doesn't end particularly well for him. Not a bad couple of days' work for me, traipsing around town, and indeed traipsing around places that aren't town. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video, that you found it informative, but until the next episode, I shall bid you all farewell.